for now. Okay, so it should be recording. Um, and then for the recording, I'll give like a general introduction. So welcome viewer. This is going to be a very quick presentation on a project that we will be working on, trying to explore the connection between human augmentation and dance. And let me just pull up my PowerPoint and let's see, share screen and share. And then, so just a very quick overview that I will do on this project. I'll start off with just like a little bit of prior literature. I went through Google Scholar just really fast, like 30 minutes. So I haven't spent a lot of time on this. This is not an exhaustive literature search. This is just like really fast what I could find before this presentation. And I'll just present these ideas, like what I got when I plugged in human augmentation, vibrotactor dance. And this is just to whet our appetite, just show us what other people are doing. Then I'll provide like just a general introduction into the project that I'll be working on, that everyone's invited to collaborate on. That's going to bring me through a little bit of my research, just like a minute of it, and then a little bit of the history of this device, which is a homemade kind of crappy piece of device, but nevertheless, it's something that may lead to some interesting ideas. And then we can always do a brainstorming session, and I'll stop recording for the brainstorming session. So in terms of prior literature, just like what other people have done, just really fast as I searched, um, there was one interesting paper that looked at giving vibrotactile feedback, and vibrotactile is just putting little vibrators on the skin to help in guiding body movements. And in this particular example, they're looking at violin bowing. So not specifically dance, but an interesting concept of you take a particular movement and how can you refine it by getting vibrational information. And I think they had like a master player do some sort of movement, and then they were trying to use that to guide a student's arm so that they could vibrate a little bit better. Another paper looked at design, implementation, and sort of a case study of what they call a pragmatic vibrotactile belt. So this was just a belt, and you have these tactors, these little vibrating things that would probably go, I guess, around the waist. And they had 8 of these, and they had like these vibrotactile patterns that would designate a different movement. So for example, 1, 2, 3 would mean left foot forward, a small step. And then another one would mean right foot forward. So it was a kind of an interesting idea of coding different patterns, which then result in different kind of dance movements. And maybe I had spoken to this with Key, but like this was the idea. This is something called I don't know. It's called like vibro teas, and it was essentially like a vibrational language that they were trying to create. Let me just close my door for a second. All right. So this was kind of interesting. Again, this is at the intersection of dance. Is it really augmenting the human? Who knows? But it's kind of interesting. And then there was this one here where people were exploring how audience can respond to an actual performer. And so what we see here is like, maybe I'll move this person box over. And so you have this human being and like they're swaying back and forth relative to gravitational vertical. You have some sensor on there, and then the audience members would feel through vibrations what a person is doing relative to vertical. So now this is getting closer maybe to performance art. Here's one where they were looking at like live dance performance, investigating the feminine cyborg metaphor with a motion activated wearable robot. So in this case, I don't know if you can see it, but she has these really cool wings that like, you can activate by pressing a button. And this was incorporated into dance. Parts of what was kind of interesting was that they're symbolically trying to represent these larger ideas of human augmentation, of cyborgs within the movement that this person was doing. And part of that movement was motivated by her interaction with this external device that was attached to her. And so, as we get deeper into this, parts of what I want to explore is when you take a device, and we're talking about human augmentation, how do the constraints of that device motivate interesting behaviors and movements? And then this one over here was more exploratory. I don't think they actually finalized anything. But what they were trying to do, the first thing that they kind of proposed was that many of these technologies that people are developing to augment dance are looking at like I don't know, expressing movement to audience, but they are not really focused on enhancing the dancer's experience. And a part of what I'm interested in is enhancing the dancer's experience. I'll just tell you a side story. So many years ago, I was trying to create a podcast, which I didn't end up creating, but I was talking to this person from the Dominican Republic, and she did voodoo. And a lot of people think voodoo, is all this bad stuff, but in reality, at least what she was saying was like it's supposed to play a very positive role, and really it's a way to connect to the earth. And she would say that she'd get into like a state of trance without any drugs or alcohol, which is really kind of interesting. And since then, I've gone to ecstatic dance, which has the same principle of getting to an ecstatic state without using drugs or alcohol. So a lot of what I'm interested in is how do you take a dancer or a person, you apply certain things to them that allow them to get into this state of trance or oneness with the universe, things like that. And ultimately, if we can reach that state, I think that would also help the research that I do, which I'll talk about in a second, which is looking at how do you bridge this bond between humans and devices, not only at the cognitive level, but at the subcognitive level. So in any case, they would try to create some sort of like physical link or like some sort of like bodily link between performers through vibrations. They weren't trying to create a realistic real life experience. They were just trying to create something, as they call an elusive representation of bespoke experiences. And then let's see if I can put it, maybe I can minimize this box. Okay, so then, in their paper, they had a few examples of different who have done human augmentation and dance. I'll just read through a few of them because they're interesting. I think there must be a whole bunch of performance art that's done this that I haven't even accessed, that's not on Google Scholar. And so when I go through another round of this, I'll have better stuff. And maybe some of you, if you're interested, could collaborate on this. But there's an artist, like Eric Conrad, and he essentially created a tactile landscape. So you're wearing this vest that vibrates. You've got GPS and electronics on it. You're walking through the city, and you begin to feel all these vibrational tactile sensations across your body, and maybe it allows you to feel more embodied, more connected. There also been some interesting things, and I've been wanting to do things like this where people are connected by network. And so you have like network-based performances where two participants, for example, may be communicating to each other through vibrations. And that's something that I think would be kind of interesting. Like if you're a dancer and some of your movements can be through vibrations felt by another dancer, and how do they respond to what you're doing? And so, the two ideas that these people in this paper came up with but did not implement was one where you're throwing something and you vibrationally feel it. And then the second is where you do have two dancers, and what one dancer is doing, another feels. This one didn't have a lot of information, but this is just a poster, so they must have been describing it. But just reading the poster, it wasn't very obvious exactly what they're doing, but maybe you had like some, main person with gestures, and then that was being re-expressed as vibrations to another person, and somehow they were using that to do dancing. The other one, this final one that we have here, what this person did is she made these bracelets, these vibrational bracelets. One that went on the left hand and the other that went on the right hand. And unlike everything I've talked about now, this didn't have any sensors. So it wasn't sensing anything that the dancer was doing. It was just, going through pre-programmed vibrational patterns. So on the left hand, I think there were like 8 different vibrational patterns. On the right hand, there were something like 100 different vibrational patterns. And some of these vibrating things like this circuit here can provide pre-programmed experiences. And so what she did is she had people come in, they spent maybe 2.5 hours with it, which included a discussion that happened afterwards. And they're basically improv dancers, and they're dancing, and then they're feeling these things on their arm, and they're trying to respond or collaborate with it. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe the first step of what we do would be similar to this because it would be an experiential exploration of what these devices can do. Okay, so now we're in the introduction of this actual project. And this was like the blurb that I had sent out, but I'll just go through it so that people who are viewing this as a video are on the same page as all of you. So the project that I am curious about exploring is that between human augmentation and dance exploration. You know, as I'll show in just a second, I created this really kind of crappy homemade device. It barely works. At some point, I do want to make it better. But what it does is it converts distance from, let's say, a dance partner into vibrations. Part of the motivation behind this was that because my research is in space exploration, why not have one dancer be like the sun and a second dancer be like the planet? And so you're trying to like orbit around your partner. What this device does, as it's currently programmed, is that it tries to keep you about 35 centimeters away from your partner. So if you're too far away, you feel a vibration on your front that brings you forward. If you're too close, you feel a vibration on your back that pulls you back. And then if you're just right, you don't feel any vibration. So in this way, you know, you can kind of orbit your partner in a planetary sort of way, but also explore dance and immersion and connection. So this device is pretty crappy. It comes with a lot of limitations. But part of what I'm really interested in is how can you take something that's technologically very primitive, but explore something that is philosophically very profound. And part of the reason why I'm interested in that is that it really seems like the trend right now, which isn't wrong, but with all of these like big tech companies, you know, with VR and AR and everything else, is to create things that are technologically very high fidelity, make it as real as possible. There are a lot of benefits to this. But I think parts of what is being missed in that dialogue is the idea that the human imagination and the human spirit, the human software, is a very important part of this equation. The human mythology, the story, the narrative, all of this thing that we're weaving. And so to emphasize that, I want to diminish the presence of the technology, focus on this element of human imagination as being a way to bridge this, you know, gap between human and device, and then later on add realism or more cool things that the device can do. And so, you know, part of that exploration is looking at immersion, maybe even a spiritual or emotional connection and how to bring that about. So the first objective is just bring really cool people together who, you know, have a strong ability to explore and be curious, and then take this limited device and see what it takes. You know, what kind of training, what kind of things do we have to do to feel immersed? And again, I'm motivated because I've met many dancers who can take an inanimate prop and give it life and really feel as if it's something that has a spirit within it. And I've met like adults and children who do play where like they use their imaginations and all of a sudden a very, you know, mundane environment turns really fascinating and interesting. And I want to look at that imagination. And the second part of this exploration is to explore how constraints inherent to this device motivate unique movements. If you think about these containers and the containers being a collaborator, it contains you, but at the same time, it kind of forces you to innovate and you get something interesting from it. I'm kind of interested about what comes out. So for example, maybe with this device, you cannot move super fast because it takes time for you to process it and there's some limitations. So how does that affect movement and look at it from the artistic perspective of what kind of interesting things come out. So in the first stage, I'm just imagining we get together, we explore the device. Maybe I don't know, we can discuss if we want to compose music or have it musicless, record this dance, and then record our discussion surrounding human augmentation in the device. And the second stage, of course, is then to refine the device and the coding. And you know, this part, like I do want to go through more literature, see what people have actually done and explored, both within dance, but also within human augmentation. And you know, there's some really interesting ideas I've been wanting to explore. So for example, here is bird murmurations. And you know, Rick, who was at Brandeis too, like a lot of the physics people at the time, and maybe they still are looking at how simple rules can lead to emergent properties. And so, you know, these are birds that are flying together. They have very fascinating shapes that emerge, and each bird is actually only implementing a few like simple rules. And from those few simple rules, you get these very mesmerizing and beautiful patterns that are just like, it's hard to believe that something as beautiful as this is coming from very simple rules. And so, another idea that I have perhaps in the future is to then explore a few simple rules that the vibrating devices are communicating, and so people can just put this on and we get at the larger level some emergent property of group movement. I think that would be kind of interesting and cool. Okay, so those are some things, and then eventually get some focused research questions and even do some data collection. So I'm just going to very quickly go through what the motivation behind doing this, because like one part of it is that I'm curious about it, but also it is related to the actual research that I'm funded to do. Um, so, my research, was funded by NASA, and I guess currently is funded by this Navy aerospace group. Um, I strap people into this machine. They balance themselves. It's like a dance-like thing. I'm actually running participants now, so if I haven't run you in my machine, you're welcome to come and experience this. Key has also experienced trying to balance in this. And long story short, without really getting into all the science of it, I can put people into an orientation where they get disoriented. They lose sense of where they are. They're not really motion sick, but they just don't know where they are in space. And this already has some pretty profound implications from psychology. Like, what do you do when your reality inside your mind is not matching with the reality outside? Um, it also has interesting implications for looking at how do devices that you put on yourself, how do they interact with you when reality outside and inside are different? So here what I've done, can't really see it too well, but there are these bandages, 4 of these bandages on each arm, and underneath those bandages are little vibrators. So the more you tilt to one side, the more vibrations you get down your arm. So you can get a pretty good sense of where you are relative to the balance point. Um, a lot of questions I did, was around this, or questions that I want to explore more is what do you do so that people feel one with this device? Because it is external to them. A lot of people don't feel like they're becoming one with the device. And the question is, maybe I make a suit that's like has thousands of these that are super immersive, and maybe that's the solution. And people, I think in the army are making that for $1 million. Or what if we do have a mythology, a storyline, a narrative, a way to awaken people's imaginations? And with this setup, people begin to feel something profound. And so those are some questions. So the device that I want to use for this dance has a little bit of a history. So let me just show you that history too. Um, and then I'll be pretty much, close to done. So I'm just opening this image, which is taking a little bit of time. So this is a poster presentation I had done at the NASA conference. It was on community engagement, and this is where this device that converts distance into vibrations was kind of born. So a number of people on this call are part of this group called TRIG, Technology Research Interdisciplinary Group, where we just do literature review, we talk about ideas, and then maybe we try to implement it. In the first year of this group, we looked at sensory substitution, which is where if you're missing one sense, like vision, can you replace that sensory information through a different sensory system? I can't see anymore, but what if I have a movie camera that converts what the movie camera is seeing into vibrations on my skin? Can my brain eventually be able to interpret that? So we did a number of literature review, and then we made a device and we explored that. And in the second year, we explored synesthesia and sensory augmentation. And sensory augmentation is you take an existing sense and you enhance it, you add something to it. And part of the device that we created was this device right over here. You can see it zoomed up. It's just an ultrasonic detector, detects how far away something is, and then it converts it into these vibrations, and you can wear it as a belt. And I've used this device for educational outreach at Waltham. I've used it for partying, where people came together around the topic of human augmentation and tried it out. Um, and then I also had an undergrad that kind of looked at different ways of coding it. And part of what we're exploring here is that what if one way of coding it, which what you've heard, is that you try to maintain 35 centimeters, but if you go too far, you feel a vibration on the front saying go forward. If you're too close, you feel a vibration on your back saying go back. This is very simple to do. You can feel immersed quickly, but it requires very limited, it doesn't require a lot of attention. And the second coding mechanism was that you're not given whether you're too far or too close. It just vibrates if you're in the wrong place, and it doesn't vibrate if you're in the correct place. And this demands that you put in a lot more attention. And are there benefits to being able to having attention woven into it? So those are some of the like deeper research questions that we were exploring. Okay, so that is the motivation behind it. And I will stop screen share. Oh, I did that. I'll stop recording so we can talk. But that is the idea. So are you sure you want to stop recording?